Hey everybody, on this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, I had the extreme honor and pleasure of sitting down from the man behind the brands in front of me, Pierre Ferrand, Plantation Rum, Mr. Alexandre Gabriel, and Greg Doxakis. If you remember Greg, he was in the very first episode of Whiskey Neat. We talked about getting outside your comfort zone with rum, with cognac, and really just, there are so many great barrel-aged spirits out there beyond bourbon, beyond scotch. And the man behind all of this, I can't tell you how incredibly blessed I am just sitting here and talking with him about these products. So I'm extremely excited. It was an incredible interview, mostly because I didn't talk. I didn't get to say much, and I love that when I don't have to say anything. Him and Greg talked about just everything they've done, the tradition behind it, and then tweaking that tradition to innovate into a more a newer age of spirits, which is what we're in now. We're going through a huge boom, a new age of spirits, and he's in a perfect spot right now for this. This week's episode, like every episode, is sponsored by GlenDronach. They're a huge fan of the show. We're a huge fan of theirs, and you can taste them. If you've never had a GlenDronach, you can find them at this year's Houston Whiskey Social. The Houston Whiskey Social is now 3 weeks away. It's just around the corner for the largest event in Texas, the largest craft spirits event in Texas. You can taste more than 350 different. You have your choice. You can't taste all 350 because legally that's a lot. So there will be more than 350 whiskeys at the event, and we're closely tracking 400. So we'll see how it goes. But you can find your tickets for the event at HoustonWhiskeySocial.com. You can also find the stuff on Facebook, Eventbrite. I mean, we're all over the place. The event is quickly selling out. I cannot express that enough. I always get hit up at the last minute from people saying, hey, are there any tickets left? I'm sorry, but if you go to Eventbrite, tickets are on sale now, and there are less than 20% of them left, and we are 3 weeks out from the event. So please, 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 HoustonWhiskeySocial.com, Eventbrite, get your tickets today. Do not wait. That being said, one last thing. Every episode of Whiskey Neat you can find on iTunes, Google Play. We're at Twitter at MyWhiskeyNeat. We're on Facebook at MyWhiskeyNeat. People say, why do you have it called My Whiskey Neat? It's because I like my whiskey neat. Without further ado, Greg Doxakis and Alexandre Gabriel from Maison Ferrand. Cheers. Yeah, thank you so much again, Doc, for coming back. You were our first.
It's my pleasure.
Our first. Thank you. Extreme honor that you're here. I mean,
good to be here. It's an honor for me.
Even if I didn't have such a great working relationship with Docs, I would have showed up if I had known about the specs thing when they were releasing it. I would have shown up and met you in passing. But I'm very honored to at least have a full conversation with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
That's my passion in life is conversational, good food. And of course, fantastic spirits. And we brought a little bit of everything this morning. Let's get started. What would you recommend we start? Because I brought the old Nicaragua, but
this is like a quantum leap, man. We got the future, we got the past, we got everything. Just this is an expression of Maison Ferrand all over the place. But
the evolution of you guys.
I'd say we start with the Sénat over there. It's because we are at the heart of it is cognac.
I've been unable to pronounce this, but from what I understand, it's 30-year-old.
Yeah, cognac.
Yeah.
Well, the Sélection des Anges refers to the angel share, right? And at a certain age point, around 20, 22 years, you very often, depending the type of cellar you're using, dry or wet, the angel share represent then more than 50%. So Sélection des Anges, which in French means selection of the angels, it's not that we're being poetic. We're just telling you that's what we're left with, which is less than 50% of what was put in the barrel originally.
50% after how long?
Yeah, 50%, about 30. It depends really the characteristic of the cellar, if it's dry or humid. But starting 20, 25, for sure at 30 years, you have less than 50% remaining in the barrel of what you put originally.
And we go heavy humid on this one though, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's a humid cellar, meaning, a lush rounder cognac because in the humid cellar, the evaporation, the angel share is more of it. And as you see, it's very aromatic.
It smells
the
very
angel
good.
share, in that case, if it's a humid cellar, more of it is alcohol than water, so it mellows down the cognac. Cheers, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers.
Good to be here. Good to be in Texas. Cheers. Yeah, it's still, still Sélection des Anges.
That's
so rich.
I was holding my breath a little bit because this is an older bottling of it, right? But no, that's the SDA, as we like starting to call it. That's the SDA that I know and love. It was the Sélection d'Ange that I tell people it got me through the hurricane. A bottle of the 30-year-old cognac. I had it close by my side for 3 days
while the world was falling down around us.
We were actually very worried for Greg, his family, and people in Texas. We were watching from the distillery in Cognac. We were trying to reach out and been to the house. Now it all looks fine.
And they did. I was giving them updates as it went, but all's well that ends well.
Even though, and we had a brief discussion about this before the show, but. We had talked about how traditionally all cognacs, all of these there's they're steeped in tradition, but also they're kind of stuck in their ways, and so you have taken this endeavor and made it about the history, but also have tweaked things. As you mentioned, you were called a renegade at one point. This is 80 proof, but it is so rich. I wouldn't have guessed 80 proof at all. It doesn't taste watered down. It's very thick.
You touch on something very important, and maybe I'd like to tell you a little story, a very defining moment in my life. I have been doing this for 29 years. I think the team is preparing a little party for the 30th year. They did an incredible job for the 20th year, so I'm honored to have such a great team. And, the defining moment is when I was trained by a master blender early on, the first 5 years of my professional life, by a very old style master blender, much like the grumpy chefs, that you have in the kitchens back then, and tough love, as you were saying earlier. And he thought I had some talent that I should grow into a full-fledged master blender, and that's you're usually trained for 20 years. And what he said to me one day, I had worked on a blend. I was so proud, and young kid at the time, and I showed it to him, and I was very proud of what I did. And he tasted it, and he said, "This is good." And from a guy like this, I was very honored. And I said, "Thank you very much." And he said, "No, good is not good enough. It should be memorable. You should define a moment when people taste where they're going to go, wow. Or they're going to go, I love it or I hate it. That's not for you to decide. What's for you to decide is to make something that moves the needle." And and his analogy was, it's the difference between a good book that you read and you don't even know if it was a book or a movie next day, or a great book that's going to stay with you. Or you're going to say, yeah, I like what that guy told me. It's kind of made sense. And I'm trying, in a modest way, because it's a lot of work. But what my team and I, because I got a great team, I told you. And what we're doing is trying to make spirits, and that's the conducting line, whether I'm in Cognac, distilling or blending Cognac, or I'm in Barbados with the team at West Indies, we're making rum, or whether we're distilling Citadel at the distillery as well back in Cognac. The defining thing to us is that, is it making a difference? And if it's not, we're abstaining. It's like, it's for us. And that's, of course, it's subjective, it's our belief. But that has always been a thread in my professional life. And that way, to be able to do this, you need to learn all the time. And so some people think I'm stuck in the past, because I'm studying the different type of woods that people were using. And yes, I've been called the renegade, and I wear this as a badge of honor. And that's why we made a range of cognacs called the Renegade Barrel. But I want to ask you a question. We are using techniques that were incredibly, used in making great cognacs in the 19th century, early 20th century, and they're delicious. And they were used for 300 years, and we are bringing back these techniques. Is that being a renegade? I don't know. You tell me in the end. And is that controversial? I don't think so. But if it's considered so, be it, because it is for us a way to say, hey, this is our contribution. You like it, you don't, we believe in. To us, it's a mission. Greg right now is opening a bottle. I know it's one of his favorite. It's a cognac that we've blended and distilled and blended. And when we did it, we also did a double aging on that one in a Banyuls barrel. Now, I love Banyuls wine, and Banyuls wines, it's this tiny little region on the south coast of France. They've been making wine since the 1300s. It's a 40 wines. Not many people know about. It's nested. They still cultivate with no trellis by hand on the floor. To plant the vineyard, you need to use a metal bar to just insert the roots into there. And they produce this super concentrated, delicious fortified wine called Banyuls. And the wineries are tiny. A big winery there is like 20 acres, but they're usually like 5-10 acres. So when they change their barrels, we're like, okay, could we have the empty barrels? And we help them find new ones. And I cherish these little barrels that have been used to make these delicious expressions. And we aged reserve further in the Banyuls barrels.
How long did you do it for?
So it's a minimum of 18 months, but, hopefully 2 years. It depends, because why I say it depends, it's always we taste and we control all the time how it shows. And the idea there is to really find the perfect balance. Now, when you do a finishing, what we call an affinage in France, it's not about giving it a Banyuls taste, not at all. Yes, there is 2.5 to 3.5% of the previous spirit or wine that's stored into the wood. So of course, this is something that's going to give you a touch, in your product. But it's about identifying the characteristics of that cognac before the finish and saying, what can you bring forward? What can you put a spotlight on with the type of barrel you're going to use? And Reserve Double Cask is a reinterpretation of the original Reserve of Ferrand that we had before. This is something that's been dancing in my mind, I must tell you, for 25 years before I dared doing it. It's intimidating. You have centuries staring down at you and you're like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. This is, I've been doing this all these years and being trained classically, and I thought that would be great to make this cognac. And you see the proof here is not 40%. This is a little higher. And because your issue about the proof you asked me, there's no perfect proof in the absolute term. There's not like spirit should be 45%. Doesn't mean anything. The proof is different for every single product. So what I'm trying to say is the proof is to show intensity. So some products are by definition very intense the way they are done. Can I get a little geeky with you on this?
Sure. Okay, I'm not going to tell you I understand what you're saying.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you something that's very important for dark spirits. Most of dark spirits, what happens is that you have three things really. You have water, H2O, and you have ethanol, the alcohol, and then you have everything else that defines the taste. Marketing-wise, it's called the congeners. Some people call that the non-alcohol because it's not the alcohol of the water. And there are like 500 little things that are there that make it taste incredible or taste, bad or no taste or whatever. So if you have like a industrial vodka, this part of the non-alcohol would be close to zero. So it would be mostly water and alcohol. Now, what you need to know, bear with me on this one, is that every single spirit of some breed has defined the minimum of these elements you must have per bottle or per liter. We do an hectoliter of alcohol. Hectoliter is about 100 liter. What I'm saying is that this is not the quality of taste, that's the quantity of taste. Now, if you look for American whiskey, the TTB regulation, I've looked recently before coming here, I want you to be, sure. It's 120 grams of what the governments have used to call volatile substances. Volatile substances is like the 20-80 rules, is 20% of these 500 stuff that are about 80% of what's in there.
Right.
Now, what you're measuring here is the quantity of taste, right? And so, of course, we at Ferrand, we love when there's a lot of that. We pack a lot. So if you have a spirit,
we got that
don't pour it out.
Yeah. I thought you put the lid on it. I thought you had the lid on it.
It's out of control.
My apologies.
So if you have a spirit that's got a lot of intensity, meaning a lot of these elements, volatile substances, then the proof, the higher the proof, the more flavor you're gonna be delivering. If you have a lighter spirit, more on these elements, of course, the more proof you will be, you're not going to concentrate more. Let me give you an example. If you take a very neutral spirit and you serve it at 40%, so there's not a lot of taste element, let's say 2 parts per million. If you serve it at 80% alcohol, that's 16 parts per million. That's still very, very, very little. So in that case, the delivery of taste is minimal both ways. Now, if you take like a Pierre Ferrand Cognac, for example, where we have a very high level, around 500 grams, which is big for most of our cognacs, 400, 500, 600 grams, then every proof you're going to increase, the more delivery you will have. More flavor. So, for example, who understood this the first in the history of spirits, to my knowledge, is the Jamaicans. As early as the mid-1800s, they understood that there is something in the bottle of a spirit that is not the alcohol that defines, they call the weight. And at the time, they couldn't measure all of this. I mean, I think these guys, this is pure genius, because they were like, this is something happening. And they had the help with some different people every time and they defined and they started controlling what they call the esters. You heard about the ester counts.
Yes.
The esters is one of the volatile substances. So, mostly volatile substances, you have the esters, which is like these fruity, overripe fruit notes. And you have what we call the alcohol superior alcohols, which are more like the bitter chocolate notes and so on. There's 2 different main families. I'm just simplifying.
Right.
So what is happening and why I'm telling you all of this, it's not, it's not about chemistry. It's just about the way you distill. What do you want to concentrate? What do you want to show? So it's going to be delicious. We at Ferrand, whether we produce rum or cognac, we like when it's got a lot, like we like to feel the handle. We like to feel the substance. And in that, the perfect proof, that was my point, you have to find that special point.
You have to tweak it.
To tweak it so it's the perfect concentration. And it could be a barrel as itch. Sometimes you open, and that's why we have the extreme expressions. When we do, we do a technique called élevage. So we taste every barrel every 3 months. Some guys think it's just an excuse to have more to drink, but it's 60 barrels a day you get to taste. When you feel that barrel is just great as is, perfect proof, perfect balance, as it's being aged. So we're like, we're going to do an addition with that. And otherwise, some are set aside, later I'm going to blend this and this.
Right.
A lot of people think blending is just, you take few things, blend it together, and voila, it's finished. No. Blending, as we see it, is a very progressive act where you actually, it's almost like matchmaking. You see this barrel and this barrel, you know what? They would work well together. And then so in a great aging cellar, you always see a blending vat, and then you put these 2 barrels together and redispatch them for aging so they marry together. And then that's how you build the perfect blend if you work on the blend.
Yeah, so we had covered the concept of élevage in the first episode that we did, and essentially it means to raise the barrel. Like you said, every few months you are trying to shape what you want to do with this, how it needs to be, where it's going, and how you can kind of direct it. It's a concept, as you've just said. Historically, a lot of Armagnacs, cognacs, or many, even whiskey, for years was just cut it to 80 proof, put it out. They don't really think about it. Leave it, and what'd you say the other day with that 40?
Set it and forget it.
Set it and forget it. So set it and forget it. We've got, and a lot of bourbon producers still do that, where they have specific spots in the warehouse. Like I know at 1792, they have a palletized warehouse where they know that this is going to be this brand, this is going to be this brand, and they just leave it alone. And they sit upright. 1792.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Then just lose one?
Yeah. No, this is their stone palletized warehouses. They sit upright on pallets. So they stack them long ways on top. And which is nothing against them. They're fantastic.
If you don't know, they had a rick house that collapsed.
No, I read that. Of course, I saw
the whole thing. Yeah, eventually.
Sorry for
first
them.
half and then the other half.
Well, it's going to make a great
heartbreaking.
story. And when they recover some of that whiskey, it's going to make a great bottling.
So I was there 2 weeks ago, and I asked them. I said, "Are you guys?" Because in a liquor store, we had a local store that got flooded, like many of them did. If there's damage to the bottle, label, or anything, I guess the TABC requires you to just throw it away and write it off or whatever.
So they have to throw all that out?
So I asked Barton, I was like, hey, does it work the same with your barrels? Are you guys required to just throw all this away? And they said, no, we're going to salvage as much as we can. So, but the problem is that when half the warehouse collapsed, the EPA came in. And the company was not allowed to do anything with the other half. They couldn't fortify the other half of the warehouse. They were literally the government stepped in,
just waiting and watching for it to go.
And then while the government was trying to figure out if there was any economic damage, environmental damage, the other half fell down. So, but back to this is the reason why, in my opinion, because Plantation, Pierre Ferrand, you guys are doing very, very explosive growth in Houston. And I know it's trickling because we do have some members in Dallas and Fort Worth, and I know we're seeing some branching out. Your brands are perfect to when someone says, I don't drink rum or I don't drink cognac because of whatever preconceived notion. This right here is incredible.
Thank you.
I've introduced people to y'all's rums, to your cognacs, and now these people are now fanboys. They buy your stuff.
Thanks.
They collect your stuff, and it's something that I think is a great unifier. Which if there was a better, more romantic word in French for that, that'd be a great addition for your next Renegade barrel. But just like it's a unifier or an eye opener, a revelation, because people will write off spirits automatically before ever tasting it because of a category altogether. And
yeah, I've seen that on y'all's Facebook page lately.
Which it still happens. It's an uphill battle, right? So our group is a public group. Anyone can join, and you're going to have people who join who are arrogant or have misconstrued notions or just they were wrong about their ideas on things. And this group's very quick to correct you. And we've been preaching the good word of Pierre Ferrand and Plantation for a couple of years now, and last fall, Wade had posted about Renegade Barrel number 1, and it was sitting all over the shelves in Houston.
The next week it was not.
I posted it, and then another person posted it, and then another person posted it, and then all of a sudden it was gone. Talamantes has cleared the shelf at a few places. It's just fantastic stuff.
I want to say thank you to all the guys who trusted us and bought that bottle, because to us it was really a foray. And like I said, it's something I had in me for many, many years. And the idea was to re-explore some of these ways of making cognac. The Renegade number 1, remember, is double-aged in a Sauterne barrel, which is actually legal. We discovered a law from you have to always look at the techniques, but also how they put them into regulation when you do a French spirits, because I don't know if you realize, but the regulation to produce cognac in France is 23 pages long. Just so, you always have to look, it's like, what am I doing? Okay, because it's very severe if you don't follow that. And so you look in the past, and I saw this rule that says cognac is a grape distillate that is aged in a wine barrel or a wine distillate barrel. That law was telling you about tradition, and that law was written in 1923. The day I read this, I was in heaven. I was jumping up and down. I was like, this is great. This is right there. I don't have to fight this battle. It is right here. And so guess what we did? We started doing experimenting and stuff, and so that's okay. And I was called by a friendly competitor, when I explained what I was doing, le renégat, which in French is the renegade, and I'm wearing this as a badge of honor. I said, I'm not sure it's such renegade to do something that was done for centuries. You decide, really. And some people think I'm controversial. Is that controversial? I don't know. It's been done for many years, and it's actually delicious. It is, in that case, barrel proof, by the way, because, we really wanted to show that full expression. And then the Renegade number 2 was something that I cannot legally call cognac. It is a cognac that is aged in a chestnut barrel. The barrel is made out of chestnut. Now, cognac has done it for centuries. We know that for sure. I work with an older gentleman called Jacques Blanc, great guy. Greg knows him. He's a professor, and he's retired before we met. And now he's very actively helping me in my research. And he's like me, insomniac. So I would receive a little text at 1 a.m. and say, are you up? And of course I'm not. And I'm answering. And he says, let me tell you what I found. And he was recently in the archives of the National Library in England. And he found a cognac merchant, British cognac merchant. We're talking late 1800s. That says the best cognac he've ever tasted were aged in a chestnut barrel. And he looked for documents for a full week, and because he's doctor, and that's a little gem that he finds, and that's 1 week of work of reading very old parchments and documents. Why I think it's very important, because I do believe that whether you talk about cognac, about rum, there's much to learn about what was done before. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong, but it is a learning that you get. Like we were talking, just to finish on this, about, you were mentioning about élevage. Élevage is proactive aging, not to confuse with dynamic aging, which is different. We can touch on that if you want, but proactive aging. But proactive aging, it's a farmer's method. In the old days, it took a lot of work to produce 1 barrel of whiskey or 1 barrel cognac, or the stills were small. The yields in the farmlands, we are producing farm products. People forget we are farmers. We are producing farm products. The yields very low. So if you distill the barrel, you nurtured it like a child. You tasted it, make sure it's okay, that the wood is fine, nothing goes wrong. That's élevage. Élevage means elevate, but you use the same term about raising a child, élever un enfant, to raise a child, same way. And really, so that's actually a farmer's method of caring very much so about that aging. So you taste it and you feel, oh, this one is great, but it could use a little more wood. But of course, because you're very careful, you don't put it like so much new wood if you're going to age it a long time. So you're going to take that barrel apart and change 1 or 2 staves or change the cap of the barrels. It's simple, stupid. It's a farmer's method.
Simple, stupid.
It is in a way. I'm learning English, and so, but it is actually a great way to be able to nurture a spirit into its full potential.
Right.
So that's what I wanted to tell you about that.
Whenever we're speaking about this, I always ask him to correctly pronounce the term for restaving, because it's one of one of many French words that I just cannot master. How do you say it?
Redouelage.
I just almost choked trying to say it.
He's doing a great job. He's now sending me emails in French. I'm so impressed.
Well,
redouelage.
I'm fluent in Google Translate.
So I guess, and that's my whole point, is you take a traditional method, right? Let's say a traditional method is the way it's distilled, the way it's aged, and the way it's bottled. And you guys are taking that history and you're removing the parts, innovating, changing proof, right? Not just traditionally always watering it down, experimenting a bit with the barrel. You're doing stuff while still maintaining that history, but elevating it. It's like getting my grandmother that new haircut, like just that perfect change to kind of innovate. And I think that's why you guys have become so, you stand out. You're an outlier.
Well, thank you. You know what, to me, honestly, and this is a very modest quest, I think knowledge is pleasure. This is why I'm here today. I'm learning stuff from you early on. We're exchanging knowledge. I've worked with 50 different master blenders and master distillers in my life. We exchange know-how, a little piece of know-hows. The way kids here in America or back in France exchange baseball cards or soccer. I'm a French or European, or world, soccer, cards. And so that's something that for us is fascinating. So yes, I'm interested about the knowledge of the past because there was so much that was done, but I'm interested with any new findings. I'm going to surprise you. Now I read a lot about something that's called dynamic aging. So dynamic aging is actually as old as aging. The people from Norway, I was in Norway 10 years ago, and I've learned about dynamic aging. They used to load up, and they still do for the top of the lines, their aquavits on the ship it down the line to the equator and ship it back. So the aquavit in the barrel is shaken and stuff like this. And so when I heard first about that, I said, that's interesting. Now, I put this little piece of information in my mind. And then when we started putting together plantation as a range, plantation rum, which is really about the terroirs and the cultures of rum and respecting these and trying to understand them. I've learned so much in the Caribbean, thanks to a gentleman mainly called Laurie Barnard. That was just a mentor to me. And I thought, dynamic aging, in the old days, they used to ship back the barrels. The barrels themselves, not in stainless steel tank, but really in the actual barrels. So you got that rum that is like being shipped through the ocean where it's moving all the time. That's dynamic aging. Now I read I forgot who it was. There were some guys who are doing dynamic aging by using music, with big bass.
Copper and Kings does it.
Hudson used to do that.
That is
really?
true.
No, this is actually a very funny
But also
story.
I read Copper and King where he's using like rap music or something with big bass.
I went down there on the day that just happened to be the anniversary of the ATM machine. So every song was rap music about money. And they were just playing the bass into the, and it's in a basement. It's not in a typical rig house,
I was talking to Ralph Lorenzo from Hudson, and then I think they're using a different sonic something or another now, but they originally using big bass speakers and putting club house music in there. So out there in the middle of upstate New York,
the barrels are dancing.
Just in the middle of the night.
but the idea there is not to be like closed-minded, open. It's just about looking at this. So I was reading about this. I'm saying, okay, to me that's another take
on dynamic
of dynamic aging, which is different than proactive aging. We learned proactive aging is this really, you got this barrel, you want it to do like you have this child, you want it to do the best it can, so you really nurture it, and that's work, and it's nothing, like it's not like some voodoo. It's really every day's work. It's hard work. And then dynamic aging being different, we just touched on it, which I think is interesting too, and dynamic aging, it's in simplest form, is shipping spirits on a boat, where you got the different movement, the perpetual movement like this. I have a little project on this. I'll let you know next year when I come here. That's going to blow your mind about that.
Do you come here every year?
Every year, every 2 years.
Okay.
It depends. Sometimes
depends on how much I complain.
You let me know next time you come, and we'll line the social up to it, because I think a class at the event would be well received. And we've partnered with this new facility that basically is letting us do classes and events before the event.
Oh, yeah?
So you can just have that private moment so that it doesn't interfere with the table thing, and this year we're doing a 4 Roses tasting of all 10 recipes before the event starts. So it's just your 30 people or just your 50 people talking about your product, like at a restaurant or something, but more private and completely uninterrupted.
Well, I love to me, it's my vacation time. I love yesterday we did tasting in one of the stores. It's a lot of fun to be able to come and exchange. And what is happening in the US has been happening for quite a few years. This incredible thing about American whiskeys and great products and great interest. And I think that is very encouraging for us as a producer. You want to make your products the way you dream they're going to be great and things like this. But it's like somebody, writing a piece of music. It feels even better if somebody says, "Hey, I actually like your music,"
Right.
And so it's always great for me to be able, like yesterday night, to exchange with people who are really, very very interested to know and to learn and to experience. And what has happened with American whiskey, I think is incredible, and I love it. I think it's great. I have worked with few people like Dave Pickrell and different people, like also Lincoln Anderson. I've done a few little partnerships.
Do you remember Lincoln Henderson?
Yeah.
We were telling Lincoln stories just last night.
Yeah.
So, I met him, was it 3 years ago? Or right at the early stages of all this, right before. And man, so I think it was 3 years ago. How long ago was it?
What's that? They died?
Yeah.
A little bit more. I was in Iceland when we were talking about last night. I was in Iceland when it happened, so I think 4 years ago.
Okay. Oh wow, it's already because we swap we used to swap barrels. That's what we did.
Oh really?
At the time. Yeah. So
a little burnage aging.
The rye is using the plantation 20th anniversary.
Dude, this is awesome. I haven't come back to this in quite some time.
Thank you so much.
It's so.
I'm very proud of it.
I don't know how you're doing it, which is the confusing. Yeah. The historically with bourbon or anything, it tastes when they cut it just 80, it tastes watered down, which it is. And even on the low side, the low proof side, 40. This is only 42.3, and it's very. I hate to say with everything, I hate to say it's a bourbon drinker's cognac, but there's a lot of bourbon guys I know who would just fall in love with this, and this was just.
But
awesome.
That's why once people are. But I do. You know what happens if you do a reduction too brutally?
Yeah.
Then it feels watery. It depends how you're working with what you're.
How you're doing it.
So yeah, absolutely. So the little secret is to do it very slowly, and also if you can, mature your water in a barrel that has contained the same spirit before. So the water is not shocking the spirit. That's called la méthode des petites eaux. I've learned from this gentleman I told you earlier, and from another person, actually, my grandfather. And it's a method that actually keeps the spirit totally intact. So it's really not hurt and just beautiful as is. It takes time, it's just a matter, and it takes warehouse space.
You're maturing the water to a point that it's an easy introduction as opposed to just a stark.
Just my guy.
You said earlier you used the phrase watered down, and I know you didn't mean it in a negative way, but watered down is a negative connotation.
Sure.
So there's a bit of a oversimplification. So what Alexander is saying is like, there is a process and there is work that's done in that gradual reduction of proof, I think is the better phrase.
Yeah.
With that aged water. So therefore, it's not too watered down and still bringing some elements from the wood in a gentle manner without.
It's a slow,
very
slow process because you do need
that's different.
It's like when you do a blend. It has to happen very, very slowly so it's fully integrated. I've discovered there's some wild stuff, happening recently, and there's 4 coopers in Cognac. These guys are genius, and they have invented a barrel, a vat that's actually shaped like an egg, and we are using it for the Citadel Reserve, and the idea with this is full integration, because when you blend different things, the last thing you want is to feel all the ingredients somewhere in your mouth. You want like the perfect integration. In French, we call that fondu, and so these guys dreamed up the perfect barrel that has no angle. So it's like a shape, like an egg.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
And it is.
Seen the Wade photo. Yeah.
And it is something that's exciting, because so I really thought when I saw these guys. So it takes 50 trees to find one stave, and then you use the other, of course, part of the tree to make a regular barrel. And so it's a lot of work, and because you have to bend the stave this way and this way, right? If you do oval shapes, but once you put a rum or a cognac in it, or a gin, actually, in that matter of fact, we use it for the gin right now. You create, it's a little element, it's not defining as a whole thing, but it's all these little bricks that built a beautiful house, right? Every brick matters. And so the idea was to use that oval shaped vat to integrate that blend. What it does is that you have a natural, what we call conversion, where the liquid inside is moving naturally by the movement of earth, but also by the cooling down, the warming up from the night and the day. So you have like a natural movement without any engine that is happening at a very slow pace that integrates all the elements that you blend and marries it. Exactly. It's a good term.
See, when I try to explain this, it's like my mouth is falling downstairs, and he just does it so eloquently. I'm like, I've heard it 100 times. I'm like,
not quite.
Really?
Not quite. Yeah. But it's so I'm interested, and that is not a tradition. That is actually, I'm going to tell you of one of my big screw up in my life. When I was very young at it, and I thought, hey, when you're young, you ignore. The more you're ignorant, the more sure you are about yourself. That was my case. I don't know about
100% my case. Yeah,
so I was like, yes, I'm young. I'm training as a master blender. These guys think I got it, so whatever. And I thought, why barrels are round? They were round in the past because you rolled them, but we don't roll barrels anymore. And at Ferrand, we restave barrels, remember, to have this. So when you restave barrels, it would be much easier to have like square hoops and do square barrels. I mean, they look like shit, but I thought they'd be good to, they don't look very good, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I like that word better.
Okay, I'm using some French.
Yeah.
And,
pardon my French.
Exactly, sorry. And I thought they would be easier to stack, and then
it'd be more efficient too.
Yeah, and it'd be easier to restave for us technically. And I did it, and I thought, this is it. This is the way to go. I'm surprised nobody thought about it, kind of thing. That was 25, 27 years ago. And it didn't work at all. It was total failure. And I was like, really? But what's wrong with this? And I talked to the guy who was, actually was my wife's father, who was a physicist, American guy that used to work for NASA. And he says, and I was talking with him, and he says, you don't have a movement in the square barrel. When the earth turns and stuff, it is like putting square wheels on your car. Like you need a big engine to move forward, and it's not a smooth ride. That's what you're doing to your spirits. And of course, luckily we did it on a very small scale. We're not crazy. And so here goes the square barrels, and the oval barrels is actually learning from these mistakes. It's exactly, not only you have that roundness in one dimension, but you have your 3-dimension, roundness. So you learn from your mistakes.
So have you thought about, just throwing it out there, being young and ignorant, have you thought about a ball barrel? Like instead of just a completely 360 degree.
Yeah, I mean, it is believed that the egg, and to tell you the truth, the egg shaped is now even influencing winemakers when they make their vats, their concrete vats for fermentation and so on. They are actually oval shaped because the square, the round, as you're thinking, it's a good idea. It could be done. It's not as practical to build, but we thought about it, and it's believed that having the oval is something that does have a movement, but also a movement that breaks it a little bit to mix it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Where the round would be, and it is all speculation because,
right.
The round barrels, full spheric, has never been produced yet. But we thought about this. We said, what would that work? And what we've done with the oval barrel is that it is doing that little increment that is better. It's not like life defining, like everything, quality. I always say, if you want to make something very exceptional, it's never like one thing that's going to change everything. It's all these little things that you're doing that are going to make a difference.
I've seen the egg. Greg posted a photo of it. It's massive. How many liters is that thing?
It's about 2,500 liters. So it's a vat. And we are, and it's very expensive. That the drawback about that is only 4 guys know how to make this. And so, because it's so technical, that's the only problem.
It's perfectly smooth, too.
Very smooth.
I mean, when we say it's an egg, it is a perfect egg. There's no imperfections that I can see.
Yeah, so that's the problem. But, why I'm telling you about this is just one example, as I'm always interested to see people who are willing to move the needle like this. It's like, yes, we learned so much from the past, but somewhere that a barrel maker says, okay, round barrels, I'm going to make an egg barrel. I like that guy already, and then so of course I knew him, so we got to talk, and so because we're learning all the time, right? And when you're tasting the reserve double cast, that's the result of those learnings, and that's me, where I don't write books, I make spirits, we each have a way to express ourselves, and that's my way to say, okay, this is I'd like to present you a cognac that I feel would make a difference out there. You like it or you don't. That's really your decision.
Well, I'll say this, and then I want to go ahead and move on to the Renegade and the Jamaica. But this is a core expression. You can find this anywhere in Houston right now.
It's true.
Yes.
The reserve double cask is something that is going to be a core ongoing expression.
Go ahead and that thing we do where we edit the photo. Go ahead and put it right here. Picture of that bottle right there. I mean, I could hold that bottle up, but I feel like your Photoshop would be better. This bottle you can get anywhere in Houston that carries Pierre Ferrand products. I know Village Liquor has it. I know Rice Liquor has it. I know NASA Liquor has it.
Find it at the major retailers.
Specs, Total Wine.
Total, Goody, Twins.
It's a great introduction to your line, and I think it's a really robust, I don't want to say perfect product because it seems a bit too... It's great. I don't want to hype it up. It's just phenomenal. I'm very happy with it.
Well, I'm glad you like it. We were a little nervous because we said, okay, that is something that maybe looked upon like, okay, he's a renegade again, and we're just digging deep and saying, okay, this is what we can say about cognac. See, cognac is, I think, sometimes misunderstood. It is as like rum, by the way. They're products with such heritage that if you start really looking, you just discover stuff. And I've been doing this for 29 years. You're like, wow. It's the same story, rum, and I don't know if you want me to talk to you about plantation right now, to transition to plantation.
Well, I wanted to cover the Renegade barrel because that's going to be that'll be the last thing about is that what that is? Or is that the Citadel?
This one is the Citadel. Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll get to the gin. We'll go ahead and go to rum, and then we'll cover this because I know, honestly, the Renegade's going to sell out immediately in Houston, so we don't really need to cover that.
Hey, listen, here's the thing. We are visiting with you not to sell product, even though we do like to do that. We're here to visit with you to talk products. So if you want to talk about the Renegade barrel, let's talk about it.
Well, I know that we can cover it briefly. I know that the first one was extremely well received. Very couldn't. And then the walnut. I wanted to ask you one question about it though. You said that you couldn't call it cognac because the walnut barrel, but you
Chestnut.
Chestnut.
Yeah.
Sorry. Chestnut
Chestnut is another story. Walnut is another story.
Slightly different. Yeah. So you said before that the regulation states that cognac is the distillate aged in wine barrels. Could you not age wine in a chestnut barrel and then call it?
It really
cognac?
No, because right now the cognac regulation that was designed in 1945 says it has to be an oak barrel.
Okay.
And it should have said, I believe, but I respect everybody's position. I would have liked that it says wooden barrel, which, by the way, this is what Irish whiskey says. These guys were smart. They said wooden barrel. So actually, Irish whiskey can go into these techniques, and they are starting to do so. So it's I've read and I've seen, I know some master blenders. So, the idea here was put it that way. And somebody in 1945, and look, in 1945, end of the war, they probably had something else to think about. You didn't have the same level of connoisseurs and enthusiasts as now. So did that really matter? Back then, I guess not so many people. And we were not born. A lot of us were not born in 1945. So that's why I sometimes get, when I see other spirits and, for example, rum, and they say, okay, we should make a regulation, it should be aged in oak barrels. I'm like, wait a minute. Why we should say wooden barrels? Because then there's old techniques as they resurface.
Restricts you.
Yeah, they restrict you. Now, you really need to be careful with the wood. That's a wood that has history in its usage. Because, for example, if you use mahogany has compounds that are not good for you, so you need to really study something that's been used for a long time. And now we have the scientific means to make sure that it is actually, very good for the products, not only taste-wise, but also that is healthy. So, and so what we did with the Renegade, well, chestnuts is a classic of 19th century cognac. I mean, a classic when you read, it was not like a huge quantity, but it was done classically. I have found invoices of Eli Ferrand the 8th. We have the Ferrand people, we have 10 generations. Eli Ferrand the 8th was buying, chestnut barrels, and we have the invoices from 1913, 1920, etc. So this was like commonplace there. So what is my dream? And I've been working on it for 10 years.
Changing the regulation.
That it would open up. And I said that respectfully to the other guys. And I know some people find it shocking. So I'm not trying to, I'm different than what I was 28 years ago, 29 years ago. I said that respectfully. I said, but if we could reopen that, to be able to use these techniques, you make incredible products. And I'm so proud and so honored that a lot of people, and maybe some people listening, have gone out there and voted with their wallets and to say, we like the products because it's a great pat on the back for us. And it's a great encouragement to say, okay, we're onto something. We're not just crazy for us liking this.
You're not cutting corners. I think that's the difference is you're perceived as not someone who's cutting corners. You're perceived as someone who is trying to evolve, and again,
and creating a whole new path.
Yeah, or to reconnect that path that used to be that way, and then these things went away with new regulations and wording, and I mean, even with your rums, I mean, from what I understand, this Jamaica's got kind of like a new interesting story. Well, I mean, we can transition to that.
Was that a segue?
Yeah, that was a segue. I want to taste it.
Okay, let's do it.
You gave me a vial of it, but
so while I'm opening this, I do want to comment on one thing. He mentioned on the record of the chestnut cask that Eli Ferrand the 8th had bought, and when Alexander acquired the family home of Eli the 8th, we found just tons of journals, and this man wrote down everything. I mean, you go through his journal, and he wrote down what he had for lunch that day, who did not come into work, who was sick, who wasn't. I mean, just there's so much knowledge and just a veritable wealth of notes that we found, that I don't think we've begun to look at all yet, have you?
Jacques did. I mean, it's 40 years of record of every day, yeah.
He wrote everything down.
Yeah. So, but what you're saying, it's when you're creating spirits, it's like a guy writing music, right? Sometimes somebody hits, does a hit, and they play that hit all over again. We love to write new music, and my team and I, we had so much fun working on the Jamaica Special Dry that you're tasting right now. And what we wanted to, this is an homage for the rum fans. There was a feisty Jamaican who participated in the interviews of the government of England in 1908 was interviewing different producers about what should spirits be, and they invited 150 people from all over the world, producers, and such as Monsieur Gordon for the gin, such as Monsieur Walker for the whiskey, and so on. And there's a gentleman that represented Jamaica that explained that true Jamaican rum should be distilled 100% in a pot still, and he was like fighting the commission. And this guy had a vision, and I like guys like that. He's a bit of an extreme guy, but it was a great inspiration. And we said, we should actually, and there's great Jamaican rums out there. But the idea was to really look at it and to say, what about making 100% pot still rum? From Jamaica, that's not blended with colon. That's just, and then we're using, you may know that one of the dreams of my life was always to purchase a distillery or to acquire a distillery in the Caribbean. I finally did. Yeah, exactly. Finally did. And I had my list, and I just was really obsessing over that. And we joined West Indies Rum Distillery in Barbados, which got some incredible old equipment, and more importantly, even a great team. And it happens that this very storied distillery that used to produce some of the Navy rum for the British Navy for many years also owns a third of National Rum of Jamaica, which means Long Pond Distillery, and also Clarendon Distillery in Jamaica. So to a little farmer like me in Cognac, this is a dream come true. I get to go and we get to make some rums together. And Long Pond is an incredible distillery with pot stills, some of them very, very old, very storied. It's a distillery that was shut down for many years. We reopened it. So it's like history staring down at you. And I've learned so much about fermentation in Jamaica, and also a blend with Clarendon Distillery, but also pot still.
And you guys actually had, I was looking on the back there, the fermentation was as much as 3 weeks for this. That's an extremely long fermentation period.
Absolutely.
She also has the volatile substances he talks about earlier, and the ester count and everything.
Yeah, it's full. One thing I love about you guys, and this is kind of to put it out there, when we invite people on the show, we kind of offer them the capability of like, hey, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And when I talked to Greg, he was like, no, we're an open book. We're fully transparent, and everything on the label is fully transparent. You didn't do any dosage on this. Not that matters.
Well, it does matter. We're not making a statement. It matters very much to the final product of the rum, but this is
sure. But there are some people who like to give dosage a hard time, and it's they're not understanding the process. But this is your and it is very special dry. It is. This is very good, just direct Jamaican rum, like just straightforward, like, hey, look at this raw, beautiful product that you guys put together. And is this hit the shelves yet?
No, well, not in Texas. We're looking, fingers crossed, September.
So the Jamaican special dry was, and you touched on about dosage. Of course, I'm totally open. To me, these are the old, very traditional techniques, such as barrel aging, such as dosage, which is for rum, countries of sugars, and in a very minute quantity. And there's been a debate about it, and I am in favor that there is a ceiling to the usage, and we do agree that 20 grams. So it's like a beautiful dish. It has a little salt, but if you taste the salt, then there's a problem with the dish.
Yeah.
So it's not about tasting the fact that there's a little bit of dosage. It is about just bringing it forward. Now, Jamaica, for the 25 past years, have decided to work without dosage. It is not illegal for Jamaican, but this has been the decision of some of the makers, and they do caramel instead in some instances. But we said, you know what? Let's do an expression that would be true to that, because this is where it's going. And I thought that would be very interesting. And that's what we did with the Jamaica Special Dry, and also the Parti Pris, the involvement, the fact of being 100%. I don't know if you realize, but less than 1% of the rum sold worldwide, less than 0.5% actually. I was trying to do the math. It's difficult but is actually 100% pot still. And I a lot of respect for people using colon still as well. It's not a problem. We have Barbados that we do is a blend of pot and colon, which is a tradition for Barbados. But that tradition of Jamaica, that's one of the traditions of Jamaica, I find fascinating. And you were talking about fermentation in Jamaica. Imagine the little redneck from Cognac that I am going to Cognac. It's true. I grew up in that way and on a farm. And I arrived in Jamaica the first time in my life, 25 years ago. And what do I see? the way they were doing yeast and fermentation and also bacteria culture, I was like, my eyes were like, I have a whole new world to learn. It's like
it's a completely different
ball game, and it's humbling. You realize, wow, we got so much to learn. And then so really what happened is that we decided to actually learn. I've decided I want to know everything about this, and we did. So that's why why is this long fermentation? I'm going to be a little geeky on you here, is that there is a first fermentation and there's a culture. Every distillery that is doing this very long fermentation, there's only 2 left that are doing this now. They have what they call a muck pit. The muck pit is a place where they cultivate bacteria. So it doesn't sound like great. It's actually great.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah, and it's actually a great thing because they actually choose the bacteria a certain way. And these bacteria, when your fermentation is finished, are introduced. It's in another vat where these bacteria feed off the alcohol and develop these esters, wonderful esters. And it is believed that Long Pond, I know that for 5 years, the distillery was closed. The muck pit was being fed just to keep that strain going. So that signature of this distillery would stay alive.
There, yeah.
Can you imagine? So there's a legend that says it has been going on since the 1700s. I'm not here to testify. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not that old. But
it never stopped.
But I know that this for 5 years, it didn't. And that was one of the signature of that distillery. So you see now, I find that fascinating.
That's super fascinating.
And so that's why, and that's why I'm learning every day. And when I went there and I looked at that, and for me to now be part of this, it's a blessing, and I take that very, very a step like a day at a time. But so that's what I love.
Is this going to be a regular product, a core range?
Yes, it is.
Yes, we consider it to be a cousin or sister product to the Barbados 5-year. That's why the similar bottle shape. But as the Barbados 5-year, which is regularly available at most of the major retailers, is like our perfect Barbados rum. This is the perfect Jamaican rum. Yeah.
Do we know what the reasonable retail range would be?
Yeah, anywhere $20, $25.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's another thing about y'all's rums is they're extremely functional. They're not these crazy $90, $100 rums. And there's plenty of rums out there that are, I'm a big fan of Habitation Valier, but they are going to be a more expensive product. So when you're getting into the hobby, and this really does come down to a lifestyle hobby for a lot of people, Plantation's a great introduction, and it's not going to, when you go to, and this is a bad example, but I'm going to say it anyways, but when you go to Subway and you want to try a sandwich there, you don't want to spend $10 and it be bad. You know what I mean? You don't want to spend an expensive amount on, and $10 is not much, but when it comes to rums, when you're learning about it, there's so much to learn and there's so much to take in. And it's the same thing with whiskey. It's really nice to have a really good raw craft product that's not going to be too expensive to experiment with.
Well, you touch on something I'm going to tell you something.
Now I want a sandwich.
To me, it's a philosophical thing. Is that we believe that I live on a farm. I grew up on a farm. We don't spend a lot of money in marketing. We are producers, and we like transparent, honest products that people can buy and drink. It's about pleasure. So should we put I always get this question, by the way, where people say you could sell this for twice as much.
You could.
I mean, I'm going to brag a little bit, and I apologize in advance, but we won Best Aged Spirit at San Francisco competition with the Jamaica 2002. That's right here on the table. And I get people telling me, you could sell this twice as much, and so on and so forth. This is not what it's about. To us, it's about
Jamaica.
To us, it's about making it honestly the way we think. And saying, you know what, we are doing okay with this margin. Let's make the product so people can taste great rum. So that's really what it is,
Man, I really enjoy your products.
There's an amazing difference, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you see the Jamaica in the glass. It's something that is very important. And the taste that you get, that ripe banana, that like pineapple that is very, very there, that comes from these esters that is that are created by the fermentation method we talked about, and then distilled in the pot still. Remember, in the pot still, it concentrates the taste. And so, this is what we do. And I find that fascinating, because with plantation, what I want to do, and I'll do this, like if somebody wants to stop me doing this, they'll have to hire a hitman to kill me. I will never give that up. It is for us to, and I know if it's controversial, whatever, but to preserve these cultures. So it's really to understand really what it is that's, I feel, is so special about Jamaica. And I want to show you, not telling you about it. The best way to tell you about it is to open that bottle. And I want to do the same thing with Barbados, and the same thing with Trinidad, and the same thing St. Lucia. I have a dear friend, Liam Costello. I don't know if he listens, who lives in Fiji.
He's our number one fan.
Liam is a great guy, and he runs an incredible distillery in Fiji. And Fiji has a pot still made by one of my somebody I idolize. Is an old gentleman that make pot stills, and he's very, very old now, but he's called David Pym. And David has made some of the very, very best pot stills that I know of. And one is in St. Lucia, and one is at Long Pond, and one is in Fiji. So a long time ago, it's like, okay, one of your pot stills is there. It's a Jandor, and Dave now is semi-retired, but we still do stuff together. And I always asked Liam, who runs a South Pacific distillery in Fiji. Fiji still produces a lot of sugar and a lot of molasses and produces rum. Liam, I want to buy some of these pot still barrels there. And he's like, we want to keep it for ourselves and so on. And I've been trying. It's like you like that person, you're really trying your luck. And I tried all the time, and because I wanted him to be part of the plantation family of expressions. And I thought Fiji with this type of quality would be great. And I received a phone call, a few years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I forgot. And he says, when are we making rum together? I'm like, Liam, are you trying to push my buttons? He says, I was with a friend. We're in the bar. We tasted blind the plantation range. I love what you do. I want to be one of them. I say, well, I've been trying all these years, but thank you. And he says, but I want to be part of that nurturing and things. And yes, okay. And so there is going to be a plantation Fiji. I'm very proud of.
I saw the label approval for it. I was pretty excited about it.
So to me, it's like, okay, let me show you. And to me, it's a whole new world. The type of cane they use world. And all the things.
The other side of the world.
The other side of the world. And if I had to describe it, it's funky. But it's a different funk that the funk that you're experiencing here in Jamaica, and the different funk that you experience with the St. Lucia vintages. If you tasted our 2003, 2004, 2005 St. Lucia, one of my favorites that we ever produced. If you see them on the shelf, I suggest
grab it up.
Grab whatever it is.
You can still find a little of the St. Lucia at Specs downtown. But I'm going to say this: we actually have 2 Fiji rums coming to Texas this year.
Yes,
we're going to have the vintage, which is 2009.
Yeah.
2009, but we also have Morgan Webber's barrel pick that'll be coming in.
And
it's going to be finished in Willet casks, Willet rye casks.
I tasted a nip of that. It was really good.
So, the idea is, and once again, is to look at these different terroirs, of rum and to cherish them. And we do that through double aging, as you know. Double aging is a long tradition of rum making, where it was first distilled, we say fermented and distilled in that original country, and then aged first in usually American oak for after Prohibition. Before it was a different story, right? That's a recent tradition in the history of spirits. This is recent, and then shipped to, in that case, Europe, and aged further in a cognac barrel. And as you say, it's shipped into now that we own the distillery, it's easier to make sure the barrels are being shipped, because you have to tie every barrel. It's a bit of a work. But it's wonderful. And that's what we're trying to do with plantation. And that's why I'm glad, if I worked for a big corporation, that's why we are a small team. We're a small company.
Yeah, you're
actually.
A family, yeah.
And we're a family. I would have been fired 10,000 times, because, people, big companies, they like to focus on a range and have just a few products that pull their weight, kind of story like this. We have 20 expressions of plantation, and every year we do 10 limited edition, we call the album, that are for our friends as the single casks. So we get so much fun doing this, and it's...
Can I be a friend?
You are a friend. You're getting one.
Okay.
I don't remember what you picked. What'd you get?
So, our barrel, yes.
Yes.
So if I remember correctly, I thought his was the Willet barrel. I'll have to forget.
Yours is a Teeling barrel, but I don't remember the country.
That's right, Teeling.
What was the country? Panama? No.
It wasn't Panama. It was
Trinidad.
I think it was Trinidad. And it was Teeling, and it was 101 proof, give or take. That nice little bump in proof, as you talked about earlier, that boost in flavor. It was really well received.
It's not Trinidad because this is going to kill me. How do I don't know this? NASA's getting Trinidad this time.
I mean, do you realize you've got all these stores locally that are just eating your stuff? Like, I'm so happy for you guys because it's not, there's a lot of big brands out there who don't need the love. They're well established. And you guys don't need it either. I mean, you guys are doing great. But there's just, when I found out about your products, I was like chomping at the bit to like be as involved and collect what I could. And you guys have all these different. I mean, if you go to NASA Liquor down, have you been down to Clear Lake yet since you've been in town?
No, not yet.
They have a whole shelf dedicated to your stuff, and it's literally 10 different plantation expressions. And I just realized we're running out of time, but there's so much more to collect. There's always a new one to add to the collection. Alex
is very good at convincing others to share their stash at his store. He's really good at it.
the one thing I'd like to do is I just found out about Extreme. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
I want to see some of that here. Some of those bottles look absolutely delicious.
Well, let's ask him. Are we going to get some of that over here?
The latest one.
I just put him on the spot.
I wanted to show, also, Jamaica has some marks. I mean, we should do a whole show about this. I'm actually writing a book about this, is that most people think there's about 50 different marks which are registered by the spirit pool. So it's very regimented. The Jamaican rum is very, very regimented. And the marks is really, it's like almost like a mash bill. It's not a mash bill, but it's just, to simplify. And it's registered, and it's the way they make it. And they usually use the initials of somebody that they want to celebrate, or the guy who created, for example, one of the marks at Long Pond Distillery is called VRW. And everybody was like, what does it mean? And we researched that it means Vale Royal, because they had bought a distillery called Vale Royal. So they got one of the marks from Vale Royal, and W because it's a Weatherburn, and a Weatherburn is a certain weight. Remember, we talked about the weight of the rums. And so, we made like the two Extreme this year are two different marks from Jamaica at the same age point. So you can actually see
the
difference of the weights. And that's usually something a master blender would drink or enjoy or use as a blender. But we think there might be crazy guys out there that want to experience it. And you might be one of them.
I'm one of them.
And that want to say, I want to share this. I want to be part of this. And now it's a wonderful time. And I want to thank you. I think to be for allowing me to be here to share this.
It's the other way around. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and to say thank you to also everybody out there. For their love and their passion for fine spirits. Because without all of you, we wouldn't be here. This is something that it's very true. And I mean that wholeheartedly. You know why I mean that wholeheartedly? Because I've done this in the early years. To be able to make a living, we had to consult for other distillers. And I've done that for 10 years. And it's a lot of work. And it still is a lot of work right now. But now I have the privilege to do it. I've learned a lot doing so, by the way. But it's a privilege to be able to make a living from it. And something that, my one trick pony. This is my trade, right? It's to make these products.
Your passion, yeah.
And so I want to thank you, and this is a great thing. And provided I keep inspired, and the team, like I said, you should see the guys I have. I used to work with the old generations that trained me. A few years back, they retired, except one guy, Luke, whom you know, who's like my guardian angel, and now I got to choose the new generation. So I got the Whiz Kids. These guys are great, and I picked them to join the team, and it's wonderful. It's like putting a rock band together, and it's a lot of fun. And if you come to see me,
it's more like a rogues gallery. When you come out to France someday and see the place, because we have such characters. And he mentioned Luke, and Luke is just I think he's like ex-special forces or something like
ex-military,
that. He hunts with a knife. I mean, he's just a character, and you're in awe of him every time you see him. He's a good guy. So I got excited there. I'm sorry. The reason why I got excited because I looked it up. It's Jamaican and Teeling.
Is that the one we're doing?
Yes,
yeah.
And it's all coming back to me now. It's a beautiful.
We're buying a barrel. We're very excited about it.
That's great.
The group should eat it up pretty quickly. We go through. I think we did something like 14 barrels last year.
Oh, great!
So this is our first rum barrel.
Thank you.
We were huge fans.
That's great.
And I do have the intention. My wife and I are planning on going to Cognac or to France as soon as possible. We're also doing an Armagnac barrel with L'Incantada.
Sure.
Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, L'Incantada. Yeah.
I always said La Encantada, but I think it's L'Incantada. Yeah. So we're doing we're doing 3 barrels of that actually. So if you guys ever do a barrel program with your cognac,
Ferrand, well, it's a good encouragement to do so. I'm really looking forward. Thank you to do this barrel program with Plantation. This is something I wouldn't. I want to tell you a story. Another failure. You're going to think this guy is a loser. Well, we do some things right, I hope. I introduced in America and in Europe 27 years ago, a foolproof cognac called Brut de Fût. Brut de Fût means, even the name, I was wrong. I'm such a bad marketer anyway. But
what does it mean?
Brut de Fût, I'm sorry. Brut de Fût means foolproof in French. Anyway, so don't ask me for marketing advice, okay? You know that. But anyway, we called it...
Did you say you were a consultant right now?
Yeah, I was doing consulting for making the products, never for selling the products. No, people are smarter than that. And so, as a distiller and as a blender, I did a lot of consulting with the team in the early days. But we called it Brut de Fût. It was so hard to sell that we had to ship it back to France, most of it. And now sometimes you see one bottle bubbling up.
Is it under the Ferrand label?
It's under the Ferrand label. It's around 55% alcohol, and depending on the barrel. And it was there, but I had to buy it back. And now people are like finding and craving it and looking for it.
But you know what they say? They say a lot of people are ahead of their time. And I think nowadays that would be very well received.
Because this is what's going to happen. Everybody, all the dusty bottle hunters, it's like start your engines. They're like, well, how do you say that again? How do I write that down? Because they're out there looking now, because I know I'm going to.
Yeah, so L'Incantada is an Armagnac producer.
Yeah, I know. They did a great job.
They release all their stuff at cask strength.
Yeah.
And people are going crazy in the bourbon world from it. They're so much so that we found a distributor here locally for them so that we could buy the barrel. So I mean, we're having to jump through legal hoops on this side, and we're not even part of the industry. And but we're buying 3 barrels of it. Each barrel is going to yield 400 bottles. I mean, we're buying as much as we can. But it's that raw, foolproof Armagnac is just so deep and rich. And you can get something for 20 years. Like this, I picked this up for $75. This is 30-year-old cognac for $75. The bourbon world is on such a they're in the process of overpricing themselves. They're jumping on that train to where if you want a 20-year-old bourbon, it's $140. It's something that people are now being forced to are more open-minded at stuff like this. And
it's good to hear, because Armagnac is also a great spirit, so you're doing the right thing. And there's not a huge amount of aged Armagnac, so you're really ahead of the trend, and you're doing the right thing by doing that, and the whole team is doing good.
Well, with that being said, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
My pleasure.
You guys have been fantastic, and we will talk to you guys later. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.